Virginia is sent to a secession debate and vote. Virginia's Governor John Letcher calls for delegates from all counties on short notice to attend a secession convention in Richmond on Monday, February 4th, 1861. Jefferson County, by a 3-1 margin, choose Logan Osborne, 1,433 votes, and Alfred Barber, 1,350, over pro-secessionist Charlestown candidates Andrew Hunter with 467 votes and William Lucas, 430. Osborne and Barber vow to oppose secession. Logan Osborne of Cabletown and Alfred Barber, head of the Federal Army at Harper's Ferry, set out for Richmond to speak against secession at Virginia's secession convention beginning February 13, 1861. Outpolled were Andrew Hunter, the prosecutor in the trial of John Brown, and William Lucas of Ryan Hall. The Richmond Convention on Secession, Where Things Fall Apart, and Sumter. More than one historian has called the conclusion of the Virginia Secession Convention on April 17, 1861, the most fateful moment in American history. Minute by minute, the silent ones even will say they're sad. Proud men bared their souls and emptied their hearts because their world was ending. The United States. Existential sorrow hollowed solemn voices as Henry Wise brandished a long-barreled horse pistol in their faces, saying the war had already begun, and by his own hand. The opponents to secession held sway in the early weeks, but Jefferson County Delegate Barber is caught up in a controversy by a discovered letter he sent as head of the Federal Army to Washington on January 2, 1861. He wrote, "I have reason to apprehend that some assault will be made upon the U.S. Armory at Harper's Ferry. The armorers would doubtless come to the protection of the armory, but the armory might be taken and destroyed. The arms might be abstracted and removed or destroyed. But the heightening crisis around threatened federal properties in the South, especially Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor, South Carolina, slowly eroding some of the anti-secession advantage in the convention. Intense pressure from ex-Governor Henry A. Wise and others is strong because Wise does not expect full military intervention by Lincoln. Wise's reaction to first seeing from his clerk, grandson Barton Wise, the news of Lincoln's proclamation for volunteers from Virginia on April 15th, in utter disbelief, according to his clerk. Before that moment, Wise acted fiercely on a belief that a strong belligerent demonstration would make Lincoln back down and pave the way for Virginia to leave the Union. A fateful, costly misread. As some would say indelicately, bully meets bully, people get hurt. April 17, 1862, Confederate firing on Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor prompts Lincoln to call up 75,000 volunteers, even from Virginia, with all delegates sworn to secrecy. The closed session convention in Richmond votes 88 to 55 to secede pending affirmation by the populace in a May 23rd referendum. Osborne votes against. Barber is absent en route to Harper's Ferry. Before the actual vote, Logan Osborne said to the convention, "I have received letters from my constituents since I came here, and they all sustained me in the position which I have taken here. All, in fact, are utterly opposed in sentiment to the adoption of an ordinance of secession, and convinced that this is the general sentiment of my people, I feel bound to vote against it. After hostilities had begun and the May 23rd referendum voice vote occurred, showing secession support even in his county, Logan Osborne wrote to Robert Conrad June 6, 1861, "My opposition was based on what I honestly believed to be my conscientious conviction of duty, but my opinions have been overruled by a large majority of the freemen of my state. My opposition is ended. My lot has been cast. I am a son of Virginia, and her destiny is mine." The Exchange Hotel in Richmond, beginning at 7 p.m. April 16, 1861, on the night before the secret secession vote, Henry Wise, Turner Ashby, John Imboden, both military men, meet and set in motion a plan to forcibly capture the Harper's Ferry Armory as soon as possible. Imboden, around midnight, arouses from his bed the sleeping Governor Letcher and coerces his agreement to not oppose their plans. Armory Superintendent Barber, also at the meeting, hurries back immediately to Harper's Ferry, missing the vote the following day, possibly to forewarn the federal command protecting it. April 18th, 10 p.m. at Halltown, Virginia, a 4-mile, 15-minute march to the Armory. Militiamen were collecting under the commands of Turner Ashby, James Allen, and Lawson Botts to march and take the Armory when they heard and saw a bright explosion. Federal Lieutenant Roger Jones, in command of some 40 regulars in the Army, deliberately blew up the arsenal and the stores of finished arms, leaving just the workshops. Jones reported, in 3 minutes or less, both of the arsenal buildings, containing nearly 15,000, which he later corrected to 20,507 arms, together with Carpenter's shop, which was at the upper end of a long and connected series of workshops of the Armory property, were a complete blaze. Despite the forthcoming referendum vote, Wise and others proceed with formally incorporating Virginia into the Confederacy. County men, drawn from existing militias, enlist heavily in Confederate units, converging at Harper's Ferry. Intimidation and armed accusations of treason force others to leave the county. More county men enlist, were mustered into Company G, Botts Grays of the 2nd Virginia Infantry Regiment, CSA, at Harper's Ferry, May 11, 1861. More county men enlist from near Uvilla, Duffields, and Shenandoah Junction, mustered in on May 12, 1861, as the 2nd Virginia Infantry Company H, also called Letcher's Riflemen. More county men enlist. Company A of the 2nd Virginia Infantry, previously called Jefferson Guards, came together on April 18th to take part in the moving on the arsenal at Harper's Ferry and mustered in on May 13, 1861. More county men enlist. Men in Company K of the 2nd Virginia Infantry, previously called the Floyd Guards, leave home and are mustered into service at Harper's Ferry, May 17, 1861. The troops here are all raw and inexperienced, wanting even in the first elements of the school of the soldier, and there is a great scarcity of proper instructors. To make up, however, for this loose state of things so striking to the professional eye, it must not be forgotten that a fierce spirit animates those rough-looking men, and if called upon even now to meet their enemy, I have no fear of the result of battle. There is a determination abroad among men who have collected from far and near to give a summary chastisement to any force which may have the hardihood to invade the soil of Virginia. The spirit is invincible, George Dees wrote May 21st, 1861. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Jonathan Jackson begins his career on the hills of Bolivar Heights, shaping these rough-looking recruits into the Stonewall Brigade. The day after the May 23rd referendum confirms public support for the Virginia secession, Confederate General Joseph Johnston, Jackson's day-old replacement, uses his recruits to follow General R.E. Lee's order to destroy bridges, railroad cars, locomotives, and equipment to impede and deprive federal forces. The molten Pyres of Railroad, May 24th, Turner Ashby's men blasted rock and blocked passage with fallen rock on the rail line near Pointed Rocks, Maryland. May 28th, Tuesday, Jefferson, Berkeley counties in Maryland. Confederates took possession of more than 100 miles of the main stem, not relinquishing it, all of it until March 29, 1862. The Confederates seized or destroyed 42 locomotives with their tenders, 386 cars, 23 bridges, embracing all told 127 spans and a total length of 4,713 feet. June 2nd, Sunday, Opequon Creek Bridge destroyed, where trains, equipment, bridges, buildings were destroyed or taken south as the wages of war. June and July 1861. June 9th, Sunday, the Point of Rocks Bridge was destroyed by Turner Ashby. June 13th, Thursday, Pillar Bridge destroyed, 9 spans of 40 feet each. Same day, Thursday, 263-foot structure at the Great Cacapon at Martinsburg. Same day, Thursday, Shepherdstown. The wooden bridge at Shepherdstown to Maryland was destroyed by pushing wagons full of fired straw into the yellow wooden covered bridge. Same day, Thursday, Martinsburg Colonnade Bridge of the B&O Railroad and East Burke Street burned by Colonel Jeb Stuart's cavalry. June 14th, Friday, Harper's Ferry. The insurgents blew up the railroad bridge, burned the main armory buildings, and retreated up the valley, taking prisoners with them. A few days later, at Harper's Ferry, the long span which carried the Winchester Railroad from the main structure was destroyed and a fine, large locomotive thrown into the river. The bridge gone, its companion over the Shenandoah, then what remained of the arsenal, as well as the Hall's Rifle Works not far away, were burned and battered. June, July, Martinsburg. Some 42 locomotives and their tenders, in addition to 305 cars, chiefly coal gondolas, were given the torch. June 1861 to spring 1862, under Jackson's orders, Thomas R. Sharp managed to move 14 locomotives and 83 cars from Martinsburg to Strasburg, Virginia, without the aid of railroad track. June to October 1861. 2 war dragons sweep through the eastern panhandle to, then from, the Battle of Manassas Bull Run. June 15th, Saturday, Charlestown. The main body of Johnston's army passed through this town. Half the available men in the county were marching with the army, and there was not a mother, sister, or bright-eyed child whose hospitable service was not stimulated through the weary hours by the thought of a son. D. H. Strother. July 4th, Thursday, Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry was suddenly captured by a few of the enemy, CSA, who opened fire on our pickets. The latter were reinforced by a company of the 9th New York Regiment, and firing was kept up for about half an hour, resulting in a slight loss on both sides of ours, 1 private killed and 3 wounded. Charles P. Stone. July 18th, Thursday, Charlestown. The 12th New York Militia occupies Charlestown, rests, eats, and bathes. July 21st, Sunday, Manassas Bull Run. Local recruits under Colonel Jackson are in the middle of fighting with heavy losses. The Federals are routed. September 2nd, Monday, Beeler or Beller's Mill, Cabletown Road. The Massachusetts 13th Regiment surrounded the Charlestown Home Guards Cavalry about 2 o'clock this afternoon at Beller's Mill and took 20 prisoners, having first killed 3 and wounded 5. National Intelligencer, September 3, 1861. September 9-10, Monday and Tuesday, Shepherdstown skirmish. Richmond Daily Dispatch, September 20, 1861. September 13-14, Friday evening to Saturday, Shepherdstown, 5 shots of 4-pound ball followed by a volley of musket fire from across the river. Shepherdstown men responded with same on Saturday, prompting a negotiated truce conducted by 3 representatives from Shepherdstown who crossed the river to settle. The Richmond Daily Dispatch, September 20, 1861. September 13, Friday, Elkwater, Virginia. John Augustine Washington of Charlestown and the last family member to own Mount Vernon was killed by a sniper while serving as General Robert E. Lee's adjutant. September 15, Sunday morning, Pritchard's Mill, Virginia, opposite Antietam Ford. 7 soldiers of the 13th Massachusetts Regiment were fired upon from the Virginia side, killing 1. Federal Colonel John W. Geary, 28th Pennsylvania Regiment, official record. September 14, 17, Saturday, Tuesday, Harper's Ferry, Virginia, Old Furnace Mill, and Orbank, Virginia. About 130 volunteers under Colonel Geary exchanged fire once for 2 hours with Confederate soldiers in Virginia positions, including Loudon Heights. They were fighting along the Potomac River between Harper's Ferry and Shepherdstown. Geary's report, official record. October 8-15, Mondays, Harper's Ferry. After having removed from Abraham Hare's Mill to Maryland, August 17th and 19th, some 15,000 bushels of horse feed, much of the 25,000 bushels of wheat, and several hundred barrels of fine flour, 2nd Massachusetts soldiers sabotaged the equipment at the mill on August 20th. Fighting broke out in October between Colonel Geary's 600 men and Confederates during attempts by the Federals to ferry the grain across the river. October 16, Tuesday early morning, Harper's Ferry. Turner Ashby, with 300 infantry, 230 cavalry, and 2 artillery pieces, charged 3 times on Federal soldiers from Wisconsin, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania, fighting for 3 hours to a stalemate. Colonel Geary later that day ordered the iron foundry along the Shenandoah to be burned. October 18, Thursday, Virginius Island, Virginia, at Harper's Ferry. Confederates return and burn the still-standing structure of Hare's Mill. March-April 1862, Harper's Ferry, Charlestown, Virginia. Federal General Nathaniel Banks' army entered Virginia, moving southward, somewhat overconfident at his chances for success against Stonewall Jackson's elusive men. But the Federal Army's control of the immediate region impels thousands of enslaved African Americans to make their way to Harper's Ferry to find freedom and work helping the Federal Army. This new consideration prompts President Lincoln to change policy so as to receive them. May 29, 30, 1862, Thursday, Friday, Bolivar Heights, Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Federal General Rufus Saxon places powerful, accurate naval batteries on the side of Maryland Heights as part of a strategy which, along with a heavy rainstorm, deters Confederate General Stonewall Jackson from culminating his successful Shenandoah Valley campaign with a capture of this last northernmost federal stronghold. He retreats. September 13 to 15, 1862, Saturday, Monday, Bolivar Heights, Maryland Heights, Loudoun Heights, and Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Confederate General Stonewall Jackson surrounds the 14,000-strong Federal garrison in Harper's Ferry with expertly positioned artillery and then infantry, prompting the largest surrender of a U.S. Army force until World War II. He also returns his force to the Antietam battle in time to save General Lee's army from sure defeat. September 13 to December 1862, Shepherdstown, Virginia, and environs. 5,000 wounded men are cared for in Shepherdstown, probably a total of roughly 8,000 countywide in late September 1862, wrote Mary Bettinger Mitchell. What did we know beyond a cut finger or a boil? September 1920, Friday, Saturday, Shepherdstown, Boatler's Ford, and the cement mill. Confederate General A.P. Hill's soldiers drive back a Federal advance following the Confederate retreat into Virginia. An early report to General Robert E. Lee exaggerating the threat had prompted Lee to scratch a plan underway to reinvade Maryland at Williamsport, thus ending his campaign into Maryland. The ferocious Antietam battle left many thousands of the heartsick, hungry, and hurting men in both blue and gray to seek throughout the autumn countryside a place to heal. The ones in blue lingered on the Potomac's Maryland side. The tattered, famished men in gray made their way to vast fields around Bunker Hill, Virginia, where they had a month to eat, care for wounds, delouse, write, or just lay down on that autumn's glorious garment. Great organized revivals bathed spirit wounds. Home and loved ones became a sweet possession. October 15th, 1862, at the Bower on the Opequon, a ball was held that night with Confederate General Jeb Stuart's men and the ladies. A group of his men had ridden around McClellan's army for 3 days earlier that week, stealing many horses. October 16th, Thursday, Shepherdstown, Virginia, and Berlin, Maryland. It was 3 years to the day of the John Brown raid, and the respite was ending. War was beginning again. For the first time since Antietam, Federal forces began crossing over into Virginia in force to take revenge.